An excerpt from Of Plymouth Plantation by William Bradford, from Chapter 9, of their voyage and how they passed the sea, and of their safe arrival at Cape Cod. In sundry of these storms, the winds were so fierce and the seas so high, as they could not bear a knot of sail, but were forced to hull for divers days together. And in one of them, as they thus lay at Hull in a mighty storm, a lusty young man called John Howland came upon some occasion above the gratings was, with the seal of the ship thrown into sea. But it pleased God that he caught hold of the topsail halyards which hung overboard and ran out at length. Yet he held his hold, though he was sundry fathoms under water, till he was hauled up by the same rope to the brim of the water, and then, with a boat-hook and other means, got into the ship again, and his life saved. And though he was something ill with it, yet he lived many years after, and became a profitable member both in church and commonwealth. In all this voyage there died but one of the passengers, which was William Boughton, a young, youthful servant to Samuel Fuller, when they drew near the coast. But to omit other things, that I may be brief, after long beating at sea, they fell with that land which is called Cape Cod, the which being made and certainly known to be it, they were not little joyful. After some deliberation had amongst themselves, and with the master of the ship, they tacked about, and resolved to stand for the southward, the wind and weather being fair, to find some place about Hudson's river for their habitation. But after they had sailed that course about half the day, they fell amongst dangerous shoals and roaring breakers, and they were so far entangled therewith, as they conceived themselves in great danger, and the wind shrinking upon them withal, they resolved to bear up again for the Cape, and thought themselves happy to get out of those dangers before night overtook them, as by God's good providence they did. And the next day they got into the Cape harbor, where they rid in safety. Being thus arrived in a good harbor, and brought safe to land, they fell upon their knees and blessed the God of heaven, who had brought them over the vast and furious ocean, and delivered them from all the perils and miseries thereof, again to set their feet on the firm and stable earth, their proper element. And no marvel if they were thus joyful, seeing wise Seneca was so affected with sailing a few miles on the coast of his own Italy, as he affirmed, that he had rather remain 20 years on his way by land than pass by sea to any place in a short time, so tedious and dreadful was the same unto him. But here I cannot but stay, and make a pause, and stand half amazed at this poor people's present condition, and so I think will the reader, too, when he well considers the same. Being thus past the vast ocean and a sea of troubles before in their preparation, as may be remembered by that which went before, they had now no friends to welcome them, nor inns to entertain or refresh their weather-beaten bodies, no houses, or much less towns, to repair to seek for succor. It is recorded in Scripture, as a mercy to the apostle and his shipwrecked company, that the barbarians showed them no small kindness in refreshing them. But these savage barbarians, when they met with them, as after will appear, were readier to fill their sides full of arrows than otherwise. And for the season it was winter, and they that know the winters of that country know them to be sharp and violent, and subject to cruel and fierce storms, dangerous to travel to known places, much more to search an unknown coast. From Chapter 11, The Starving Time. But that which was most sad and lamentable was that in 2 or 3 months' time half of their company died, especially in January and February, being the depth of winter, and wanting houses and other comforts, being infected with the scurvy and other diseases which this long voyage and their inaccommodate condition had brought upon them. So as there died sometimes 2 or 3 of a day in the foresaid time, that of 100 and odd persons scarce 50 remained. And of these, in the time of most distress, there was but 6 or 7 sound persons, who to their great commendations, be it spoken, spared no pains, night nor day, but with abundance of toil and hazard of their own health, fetched them wood, and made them fires, dressed them meat, made their beds, washed their loathsome clothes, clothed and unclothed them. In a word, did all the homely and necessary offices for them which dainty and queasy stomachs cannot endure to hear named. And all this willingly and cheerfully, without any grudging in the least, showing herein their true love unto their friends and brethren, a rare example and worthy to be remembered. 2 of these 7 were Mr. William Brewster, their reverend elder, and Miles Standish, their captain and military commander, unto whom myself and many others were much beholden in our low and sick condition. And yet the Lord so upheld these persons, as in this great general calamity they were not at all infected either with sickness or lameness. Indian relations. All this while the Indians came skulking about them, and would sometimes show themselves aloof off. But when any approached near them, they would run away. And once they, the Indians, stole away there, the colonists' tools, where they had been at work and were gone to dinner. But about the 16th of March, a certain Indian came boldly amongst them, and spoke to them in broken English, which they could well understand, but marveled at. At length they understood by discourse with him that he was not of these parts, but belonged to the eastern parts, where some English ships came to fish, with whom he was acquainted, and could name sundry of them by their names, amongst whom he had got his language. He became profitable to them in acquainting them with many things concerning the state of the country in the east parts where he lived, which was afterwards profitable unto them, as also of the people here, of their names, number, and strength, of their situation and distance from this place, and who was chief amongst them. His name was Samoset. He told them also of another Indian whose name was Squanto, a native of this place, who had been in England, and could speak better English than himself. Being after some time of entertainment and gifts dismissed, a while after he came again, and 5 more with him, and they brought again all the tools that were stolen away before, and made way for the coming of their great Sachem, called Massasoit, who about 4 or 5 days after came with the chief of his friends and other attendants, with the aforesaid Squanto, with whom after friendly entertainment and some gifts given him, they made a peace with him, which hath now continued this 24 years in these terms: 1. That neither he nor any of his should injure or do hurt to any of their people. 2. That if any of his did hurt to any of theirs, he should send the offender, that they might punish him. 3. That if anything were taken away from any of theirs, he should cause it to be restored, and they should do the like to his. 4. If any did unjustly war against him, they would aid him. If any did war against them, he should aid them. 5. He should send to his neighbors confederates to certify them of this, that they might not wrong them, but might be likewise comprised in the conditions of peace. 6. That when their men came to them, they should leave their bows and arrows behind them. After these things he returned to his place called Soams, near 40 miles from this place, but Squanto continued with them, and was their interpreter, and was a special instrument sent of God for their good beyond their expectation. He directed them how to set their corn, where to take fish, and to procure other commodities, and was also their pilot to bring them to unknown places for their profit, and never left them until he died. From chapter 12, First Thanksgiving. They began now to gather in the small harvest they had, and to fit up their houses and dwellings against winter, being all well and recovered in health and strength, and had all things in good plenty. For as some were thus employed in affairs abroad, others were exercised in fishing, about cod and bass and other fish, of which they took good store, of which every family had their portion. All the summer there was no want, and now began to come in store of fowl as winter approached, of which this place did abound, when they came first, but afterward decreased by degrees. And besides waterfowl, there was great store of wild turkeys, of which they took many, besides venison, etc. Besides, they had about a peck of a meal a week to a person, or now, since harvest, Indian corn to that proportion, which made many afterwards write so largely of their plenty here to their friends in England, which were not feigned, but true reports.